they can be victims too. And it seemed like he was the victim of an injustice here, and that there was a narrative that had been spun about this story that was largely false. Again, these were things that had come out before my article, but which didn't seem to really make a dent, I think, in the narrative until I published my piece, I think, because I was the first journalist to really just kind of take the whole story thus far and put it together in one narrative. There just hadn't, for whatever reason, no journalist did it. That's one of the other reasons why I think I wanted to do this story, was because, as a writer, I try to do work that is original and that adds to the conversation. And I saw a big story here that wasn't being reported.
Yeah,
I saw little pieces of things that could add up into a different alternative narrative to what we were all being told is the official story. The official story had been endlessly repeated, but there was this whole other side, including from Armie Hammer himself, his side of the story. But there were these other things, right? Like there was Elizabeth Chambers, colluding with the main accuser. There was the fact that Gloria Allred dropped Effie as a client. That was something that was reported by another media outlet. I think it was Us Weekly reported it months before I did my story. That, to me, was one of the main impetuses for me to pursue this. Because when I saw that, Gloria Allred is not known for being publicity shy and for taking on causes. So the fact that she would drop someone as a client,
that was a signal to you that
the credibility of Effie was in serious doubt, was in serious question. And again, it's like this was known for months. Why is no one writing about this? Why is no one following up on this woman's accusations? Why is this ongoing investigation? It's been ongoing for almost 2 years, and someone's supposed to sit there in limbo with these accusations against them that they're a cannibal and a rapist, and they lose all their livelihood, and they're trying to sell timeshares in the Cayman Islands, and they're humiliated for doing that, and he can't even do that. It just seemed like there was this glaring injustice. I mean, it's an injustice. Yes, Armie Hammer is a handsome white guy who was a movie star, but you know what? They can be victims too.
Yeah,
and it seemed like he was the victim of an injustice here, and that there was a narrative that had been spun about this story that was largely false.
Yeah, the text between Elizabeth Chambers and Effie, the main accuser, were and knowing that those texts were out there before you published this article, it's just so shockingly blatant that people chose to ignore it. Like she literally, on February 21st, Elizabeth Chambers issued a statement saying she was, quote, shocked, heartbroken, and devastated by the allegations, and she will listen and learn. And I didn't know how much I didn't know. And then there's like text behind the scenes with her and Effie saying, I really need custody of my precious children. Do you think you could make a declaration this week? It will all be private, which...
And this was months before.
Yeah. And to me, just anyone reading that article, and by the way, like the article that you wrote, people definitely have to go check it out. It's presenting the facts. There's not much opinionated spin to it. It's literally just laying out the story and the timeline that it occurred. And without the opinion inserted in my head, I'm going, oh, this sounds like a custody battle that just got out of control. Or there's like one little spark that Elizabeth Chambers maybe got in the back of her mind. Like, oh, maybe I could use this to win custody, maybe, I don't know. And it sounds like it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed to the point where they couldn't go back on anything that they said, Effie or Elizabeth Chambers. And it just, at that point, you can't say you're a liar. I mean, you could, but like, it's just, it seems like a small situation that absolutely exploded out of control. And the custody battle, based on what you presented, seems to be a big impetus of that.
Yeah, like, you know, I come from an opinion journalism background. That's really most of my work, or a large portion of my work does fall into that. But with this, I didn't really want to weigh in so much. It was a very complicated story. There were lots of pieces that needed to be explained, and I just figured it would be a more effective piece of journalism just to lay it out there and let readers decide for themselves. Because I think that that's a problem with a lot of journalism today, is that there's a lot of reporters and writers who are supposed to just cover the news, but who often feel the need to give their slant.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. No, it was not needed at all. And
No,
that's
I think
right
it's more effective that way.
Yeah. Because it's planting the seed, and you can connect the dots as a reader and see how everything comes together, and also just the things that were blatantly left out of the main media arc. The Me Too NFT sounded like something like, I literally was like, this is a South Park episode.
Yeah.
There would be a South Park episode about someone who falsely claims to have been sexually abused and then releases an NFT.
Who never met him, by the way.
Who never met him. That's the
crucial bit of evidence
craziest
here.
part. That was I forget if that was Paige or
Julia.
Courtney. Julia Morrison. Yeah. For people who haven't read the piece yet, Julia Morrison never met Armie Hammer, was in communication with him
On Instagram.
New York Post and other outlets referred to her as an ex of Armie Hammer.
It was New York Magazine, I think.
Yeah, even though they had never actually met in person. Yeah. And then she turns around and takes a screenshot of the partial conversation that they had.
Just his
end of it, and then registers it as an NFT. And I thought the most hilarious part was she said a portion of the donations would go to, you know, some Me Too charity or some women's charity. So like it wasn't even, and a portion could be 2%. But like, I wonder like who is around these people, especially the accusers that are enforcing these ideas and enforcing like, oh yeah, like that's the right move. Like she's talking to her friends, or Elizabeth Chambers talking to her friends, and they're just like, oh yeah, go for it, totally. Like this
I actually blame the journalists, because we have a journalistic culture now where so many of these outlets will just print any allegation. If you can just stick the word alleged in there, they'll print it.
Yeah.
And this happens all the time. And they just duplicate each other. And there's just so many of these websites now that have so low standards, and they don't do any original reporting. And it's really frightening, because anyone is susceptible to being accused in this fashion.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there are just journalists who are not exercising discretion. And this drive for clicks, I think, is a huge part of it. And I think that's what we saw in this case. Yeah.
Yeah. The also putting the question mark at the end of article titles.
Yeah.
I don't know how you
Armie
feel about
Hammer,
that.
cannibal.
Yeah, exactly. Anything. Literally, like ice cream. That's just Tupac's soul trying to get on the podcast.
Yeah, he's really,
he's really trying to make an effort to become part of this conversation. For people that are just listening, James is using a Tupac coaster, and he keeps trying to rise back to this world. Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's exactly. I've had to pull it away, but the question mark at the end of articles where you could say ice cream truck driver poisons fifth grader and put a question mark at the end of it. And then you go into the actual article and it says there's actually no evidence that this happened. He most likely ate the ice cream and got a stomach ache from something completely different. But it's crazy how you can't get, well, I mean, I'm sure you could get sued if someone decided to sue you for the question mark, but does that give you immunity from being sued if you just add a question mark to any title?
Well, this is a whole nother conversation about defamation law and whatnot, and it has to do really with whether the person is considered a public figure,
Yeah.
Because then the standards are the threshold for defamation is much higher when you're dealing with a public figure. There's a case, New York Times versus Sullivan from the 1960s, I believe, that is sort of the legal standard on this, and it established that in terms of public figures, there has to be a very high bar for defamation. So that's why, you see Donald Trump when he's like threatening to sue the media, to sue newspapers. It's mostly idle threats because he's the president. He's probably the most famous person in the world, right? So it's extremely difficult. But when you're dealing with people who are essentially private citizens, or if you look at this, defamation case involving Dominion voting systems, right? I mean, and they would have won, which is why Fox settled, because they were afraid that if they took that case to trial, I mean, aside from the discovery process and what would have come out, I think they also realized that they could have lost even more money than what they settled for.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're just a private citizen, then it's much easier to file defamation cases against the media.